Hello and welcome to another episode of Movies That Make Us. I'm Jake.
I'm Tracy.
And I'm Val.
And we have with us a very special guest, Mr. James Owen. How are you today, sir?
I'm awesome. How are you guys?
Doing good.
Yeah,
James,
all right.
James is an old friend of mine. We have known each other, probably 10, 12 years?
Yeah, at least.
Somewhere in there. James is an author. He's a best-selling author. The Here They Be Dragons section. I guess I shouldn't tell us all this. James, tell us about yourself.
No, that's the accurate one. Here There Be Dragons is the best known of my books. I came from comic books, so I was used to writing and illustrating my own stories. And the last 15 years or so, I've been doing mostly illustrated fantasy novels. And Here There Be Dragons was the first book in the series, The Chronicles of the Imaginarium Geographica. And it's in print in 22 languages and still selling in hardcover 15 years on. And so if there's going to be an introduction, starting out with that's not a bad way to do it.
Well, and I have to say, like, out of all of our guests, and I hope I don't hurt anybody's feelings, but you have probably the best head of hair that we've ever had on a guest on this show. Those of you that are listening through streaming, this is exactly why you need to watch the show on our YouTube channel, because you're missing out on like the best head of hair I've seen in a while on this show.
Wow.
No, I'm sorry, Jake and Tracy, but
no offense taken.
I mean, it's beautiful. I can't keep my eyes off it. I'm mesmerized.
You know, there's an event. I'm on the advisory board for the charity Kids Need to Read, and we hold a geek prom at Phoenix Fan Fusion every year. And the first year we did it, we had a big costume contest that was being judged by me, Will Wheaton, and Felicia Day. And somebody recorded some video, and it was on YouTube. And I thought, oh, that's great. I would love to see, what they caught. What they caught was Felicia saying, okay, before we get started, I have to make a comment that this man has the best hair in the room. That's my legacy now, is Felicia Day commenting and complimenting my hair.
There you go.
So I'll take it. You're in good company.
He's a time lord. If you go and you look at pictures 20 years ago, he looks exactly the same. It's not fair.
Oh, there's a documentary called The Cartoonist about Jeff Smith, the creator of Bone. And I was watching that a few years ago with my son, Nathaniel. And they showed some photos of the group of us. We did a bunch of tours together, trade shows and conventions, and we did jam prints, several of these independent publisher cartoonists. And my son looks at that and he says, Dad, how long ago was this? And I said, that was 25 years ago. And he said, wow, you don't look any different at all. And I said, you are now the new number one child. Making your sister's face.
Flattery will get you everywhere as far as kids go.
Really, really quick, James, would you share with them the Nathaniel story about Mark Hamill? Because this might be my favorite thing.
Okay. San Diego Comic-Con. I've been going as a professional since before I had a driver's license. And a number of years ago, the booth that I had was in the independent publisher section near DC's big, massive booth. And mine backed up to Batten Lash's booth. And Batten and his wife, Jackie Estrada, she runs the Eisner Awards. So she's friends with everybody. And Bill Mumy and Mark Hamill stopped by to say hello. And Batten saw my kids there. And Nathaniel was maybe 7, I guess, and a big Star Wars fan. And they said, would your kids like to meet Mark Hamill? And I said, absolutely. And so we brought the kids around the corner to Batten's booth, and they introduced Mark to Nathaniel. And Nathaniel says, I'm a big Star Wars fan, big fan of Luke Skywalker. And Mark was there promoting the Batman animated series. And he said, well, I'm also the voice of the Joker, and I'm doing these other things too. And Nathaniel says, yeah, but I think I prefer your older work. all the adults, all the blood just drained out of everyone's faces. And Mark looked at him and just cracked up and gave him a hug. And he's like, "You're all right, kid."
Kids, you'll always get the truth, whether you like it or not.
You always have to be prepared when you ask a kid a question because you never know what they're going to say. That's awesome.
But the movie we're talking about today is A Knight's Tale. And James, I had not seen this when I first met you. You talked me into it. You were like, you need to watch this movie. And so this was years and years ago. So now when we brought up talking about this, I'm like, we have to talk with James because if we don't, I'm going to be in trouble.
That is how the conversation went. We mentioned doing A Knight's Tale, and Tracy immediately said, we need to have my friend James on to talk about it. So, which he's also dropped your name every time we bring up a Muppet movie as well.
Yeah.
He's actually got some stuff in the works where he's going to try and put together a short film. The actor's name, James, the guy that played Punk.
Oh, Kirk Thatcher.
Kurt Thatcher. Yeah.
Director has written. He was the co-director and co-writer on Muppets Treasure Island.
And he did the new Haunted Mansion.
Star Wars. And the new Haunted Mansion Muppet movie. That was Kirk as well. And we're going to try and rope him into a couple of these film projects that I'm doing here. And I have a long friendship with Lisa and Brian Henson as well. They've been very supportive of my books, but also their dad was one of my heroes. And the way that they ran things in that business, the way he treated collaborators, I always just felt that was pretty ideal. And his kids have tried to maintain those same standards of integrity. So, and then Kirk's just a whack job. He's brother from another mother. So yeah, I've got a couple of film projects we're going to pull him into.
Well, we are talking about A Knight's Tale. This came out, gosh, now almost 20 years ago. I think 2003 is when this one came out, if I remember right. And by remember right, I mean I was looking at it on the IMDb, not that I actually recall.
I thought the internet just was our memory at this point. When you say I remember, I know that we're just referring to the interwebs and the fact that we just look there all the time for everything.
Mhm.
I have exactly 2 phone numbers memorized. I have 3 phone numbers memorized. One of them is mine, and that is it. Because everything else is stored somewhere I can get to it. It's a sad state of affairs.
It's so true. When we were kids, we had like 20 phone numbers. But
yeah. Like you could say, I'm going to call my friend James, and you'd be like, do. You don't have to look at anything. Now we're all stupid.
And to top it off, I just opened up IMDb again, and it was 2001. So I didn't even remember right from the time that I looked at it.
It's a
in
little
preparation to
over
talk about
21
it
years
today.
old.
So
It's legal. We can drink with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because this is one of those movies.
This is probably one that people would go out and drink with, I would imagine. This is, they'd be all for it.
This is why we keep mead in the kitchen.
Be down for a good mug of mead and then a good flogging afterward, I'm sure.
Throw on some Queen and you're ready to go.
Maybe a little David Bowie.
Maybe a little
Shot
Bowie.
every time you see Paul Bettany's naked butt.
Okay. Speaking of Paul Bettany's naked butt,
That's
Yes.
a transition you never thought you'd say.
well, no, at this point in the show, yes, I think that's a transition that.
You had to know it was coming. We're talking about the show.
So Paul Bettany in this film, this was, I think, one of his first big roles, and one of the ones, I mean, it's the first time I remember seeing him in anything. And to this day, anytime I see him on screen, I'm like, oh, that's the guy from A Knight's Tale. Like, this is a role for me that was like so defining for him as an actor that I see him as Geoffrey Chaucer every time. Not just his butt, but the whole character in general.
Sure.
Sure. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right.
Well, I read an article that said the studio wanted Drew Carey to play Chaucer. And I'm like,
What?
I don't think that would work. He had to fight them because they really wanted Drew Carey. But then he said when he gave the script to Paul Bettany was like, you bleep. you're making me be naked. And he's like, yeah, do you want it or not? He's like, yes, I want this role, but dang it, why did you do this to me?
I just love
could do a whole
that this movie. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No,
I
you
could
go.
do an entire marketing class called Everything I Learned About Promotion. I learned from Paul Bettany's Jeff Chaucer in A Knight's Tale. As that other page, learned throughout the course of the movie. But, just your comment about Drew Carey, what I went to immediately was that sequence where he was in trouble for gambling and looked up at William, and just the pathos, that expression, that weight from this guy who had been largely comic relief for the whole thing. Even naked on the road with a thorn in his foot, it was still funny. But then there was that one moment where he said, please, will you? And just, I could not envision anyone else making that transition.
No, and certainly not Drew Carey. I mean,
no.
I mean, he kind of surprised us, but yeah, I don't know. I just think it's great that Paul Bettany did this in A Beautiful Mind in the same year. Like these are, two totally different movies, very challenging for him for both. And I mean, he held his own up against some really great actors and really good stories. I mean, he lucked out in 2001.
Yeah. A Beautiful Mind is an interesting one for me now because a little while ago I had to go in and get a root canal, and my dentist has movies that he has like TVs up on the ceiling, so while you're getting worked on you can watch movies. And Beautiful Mind was the one that I chose while I was getting my root canal. So now I love that movie, but it's also kind of painful. It's like
because it wasn't painful enough before you added your root canal. It's a painful movie to watch.
Well, maybe that was my thought. Like, it could be worse. I could be that guy,
Hey, whatever gets you through the root canal, man. I'm not judging.
Man. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think Paul Bettany is great in this. I think all of the actors are. And really at the time, I mean, none of them had done anything. Heath Ledger wasn't like Heath Ledger yet when this came out. And Alan Tudyk as well he'd done some things, but he wasn't the legendary voice actor Alan Tudyk yet. So there wasn't really any big name. And so that may be why the studio was going after somebody like a Drew Carey, saying, hey, we want a name attached to this.
Yeah.
So people will come see it.
For me, it was Rufus and Mark that were the people that you knew. Rufus had been in a lot of romantic comedies and is a huge British actor. Mark, the same. And I liked both of them. But again, there were those actors at the time where I was like, I really like those guys. I don't know their names, but I really like those guys. Because they had all been these side characters in these movies, for like 5 years in my life. And I was like, okay. And then, I was a fairly young lady at the time. And so Heath Ledger was in a few smaller things that I was like, all right, I'm open to this.
10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah. I mean, that was on repeat, at my house. And I think that and this movie were very similar in that music played a big part in both of those movies. And Heath, played along with that. But I think this was one of those movies at the time that really brought the soundtrack back to a film because, we had Wild Wild West. We had, all of these other movies with that a soundtrack was, you had the movie, you had the soundtrack, you had the music video. And it was like that for a few years. And then we kind of lost that a little bit. And then you have this movie come out and here it is again. But they really did. They broke this wall. I don't know. Is it the seventh wall where you bring in newer music to a piece that it doesn't belong to? I don't know what you would call that wall. Tracy, you probably know the technical term to that, but I think it was something that we hadn't seen before where we have a period piece, but then you have music that we can all relate to, and with the choreography very similar in that. And so it really, I think it brought the period piece to an audience that wouldn't normally watch a period piece.
Oh, absolutely agree. And I think that was part of the genius of that is the director deciding to do that meant that he was sidestepping any criticism about accuracy in a period piece.
That's a good point.
He was signaling right from the start, this is not going to be the kind of movie you're expecting. But the fact that he, from minute one, wove that music into, the Queen, the clap, clap, stomp, wove it into the visuals. It wasn't just soundtrack. It was soundtrack integrated into the film. That knocked it out of the park for me.
Yeah, and Baz Luhrmann, I think, kind of did a similar thing in when was this movie made? Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio, but that was like 1996. So that was a big space of time. But again, that was very successful. It blew me away. As soon as, you get the Queen in that scene, I think everybody in the audience, if you had the chance to see it in the theater, you just got goosebumps.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I remember they got a lot of criticism for that decision. There were a lot of critics who were very upset about that. And I love the director's response was, well, if I have an orchestral score, that still doesn't make sense either because they didn't have those instruments back then. So
I was going to have a guy with a lute strumming along, maybe a little flute behind him.
Yeah. I do remember though watching it the first time, and when you do get that Queen song, thinking, okay, what kind of movie is this exactly? Because with the whole crowd stomping and clapping along with it, you're just like, okay, like I get
the song.
this is different. And then it was like, but I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it. And I think it's one of the reasons why I think of A Knight's Tale as being a really unique movie, because it does it so differently and so well. And it's just its own thing. It's hard to classify it. Is it a comedy? Is it a period piece? It's A Knight's Tale. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a boy finding his place in the world.
Yeah. And in 2001, that was probably about where I was trying to find my place in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep, absolutely.
It's that story that I think, has been told over and over again, is that you are supposed to be this one thing. And are you okay with that? Or are you going to go, push the borders? And I mean, it's a story we've been told a million times, but the way he told it, I feel like I'd never seen it before. So I'm a film critic, and I think film critics are stupid. Like, this is the thing is, there are some rules that you should follow for certain things, but like the whole idea of cinema is like to discover something new.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So this was one of those things, and I was not a film critic at the time. I was far enough out of film school that I appreciated movies again.
Yep,
I wasn't a jerk watching movies like, that doesn't make sense. You didn't follow this rule.
Right.
But I was just blown away. I just remember like leaning, and that's when I get the A, is you lean forward in your seat because you're just like, the movie pulls you in. And I think this was one of those. And I think that it ages really well. Like, I could go upstairs and watch it right now again, and I'm not thinking this was made, in the early 2000s. Like, I think it holds up for me. So
I probably watch it 7 or 8 times a year.
wow.
Yeah, just put it on, and I know every scene and I know every line, but I want that whole combined experience. And if it's playing in the background, there are certain scenes that just hit like a ton of bricks, and all right, I'm going to put down my pencil and stop working because I've got to take this in for a few minutes, because it's probably in my top 5.
Yeah.
So what are a couple of those scenes?
Man,
Is that like asking your favorite child? But that's Nathaniel. So
pretty much. The one scene, and I've written about this. It's part of why this triggered Tracy to suggest that I come on. The whole premise that he decided he was a knight, and they figured out how to. I can go out and perform. We've got to figure out ways to fake, the legitimacy so I can continue to do the things the knight's already doing. All of those aspects of it. I loved all of those. And going up against, Rufus's bad guy, who was a legitimate bad guy in this,
Yeah.
The whole bit where he's found out before that last big tournament and he's going to be arrested. And all of his friends say, you can't win this. And he said, so do you think I should run? They said, God love you, William. Yes, you should run. And there's a moment where it pauses. And then he snaps and he's like, no, I am a knight. I will not run. And the correlation that I gave to that was I did a Kickstarter a few years ago for a trilogy of books, my Meditations trilogy. It's the nonfiction inspirational books, $25,000 to be able to publish these 3 books. It was a 30-day campaign. At day 25, we were just over $12,000, had not even had a full $1,000 day. And I had that moment where a bunch of the people that love me the most, my best supporters, said, it's not going to work. It's not going it's not going to work. We can shut this down. We'll just do paperbacks. We know you can get this far. You should quit the campaign and we'll start a new one with a lower goal. And I thought about that. And then I thought about that scene in A Knight's Tale. And I said, you know what? If it doesn't work, so be it. But I'm not going to quit. I am not going to stop. And then this guy named Stephen Wendell, who'd been a student at Superstars, posted something online, and he said, James teaches us that we can, and he at one point used the phrase, change our stars, that we can decide we want to make something work. And he said he is 5 days away from this either working or not. And he has declared that he is not going to quit. He's going to see this through. And we have to find a way to help him. And I'm in for another $100. Who's with me? And we closed that campaign just over $26,000, and the book got published. And I absolutely attribute those choices to this movie and that scene.
And that published book is what led me to you.
Oh, yeah.
Trying Out the Dragons is how we met.
There was a talk that I did that then got Lisa's attention and then your attention. And yeah, that's the basis of my friendship with Tracy.
And it's all because of A Knight's Tale.
And the thing is where that led. That's the thing, is that scene led to the victory of him at his lowest moment. He's in the stocks. People are throwing cabbages at his head. And then the prince reveals himself and walks up, and he remembers that gesture of grace that William gave him in a tournament. Mm-hmm. And then he makes that comment. He says, you tilt when you should withdraw, and that is knightly also. And that's perfect. That is perfect.
Yeah. It's amazing that a movie like this that really on the surface, when you look at it, is silly and goofy at parts, can lead to a moment like that where it can be so touching and so powerful. And I think that that's incredible that a movie can do that and make you feel all of those different things at the same time.
I mean, those are the movies that make us, Jake.
It's a good name for a show. Somebody should make that show.
Somebody write that down. I got to say, rewatching this last night, I was just struck by how sad I am that we did not get more from Heath Ledger, because that guy just radiates on the screen and he just commands every moment. And like Val said, he wasn't the Heath Ledger that he was just kind of a teen heartthrob, but there was so much more to that man. And his performance in this it made me sad for the movies that we don't get to see that he could have done.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think probably some people put him in that heartthrob category, but I think what attracted me to watching him is that he had so many different layers and dimensions to him. Even, the reason why 10 Things I Hate About You is so great is because he gives it more than just what you would expect for, a teen heartthrob movie. One, that script I think is brilliant and I think overlooked a lot. But his character is very three-dimensional. And it's something that we didn't see at the time because he didn't necessarily look like what we thought, the leading man would look like at the time. And he didn't talk like the leading man, and he didn't, walk like the leading man. It was definitely something different, and we all bought it because he was really good at what he did. From a young age, you wanted to watch more.
Yeah, and when you look at his career, I mean, he did 10 Things I Hate About You. That was before A Knight's Tale. And then really after that, it was like Two Hands and then The Patriot, where he was one of the sons, one of Mel Gibson's sons, I think his oldest son. And he was really good in that. And when you watch that, he stands out quite a bit. But then it was A Knight's Tale after that. So it's, I feel like this was really his chance to show that he could be that leading actor, and not just in a heartthrobby kind of way, because he's still got great hair in this. I mean, not James Owen's great, but still really good hair in this.
Wow. I'm using that quote everywhere for the rest of my life. Had great hair, not James Owen great, but
well, I also think that he definitely took, some risky choices. Now we look at A Knight's Tale and we think, well, oh yeah, like why wouldn't he take that role? It seems like this is a winner of a movie, but just think about like reading this screenplay, right? Sure. And seeing these characters and then looking at the cast that's put with you. Again, we've said it before at the beginning of the show. We didn't know that these people were going to be great. We didn't know that this story was even going to work, right? I mean, you have a horse in a cathedral, which sounds like a lot of fun to me. But again, like it was a risky choice after doing something like 10 Things I Hate About You, because especially at that time when, there was a ton of different movies that were in the similar genre being made, and that was just the time for that movie. But then choosing something like Brokeback Mountain.
Yeah.
And there's, what was the feather movie that he was in?
Four Feathers.
Four Feathers, that wasn't critically acclaimed at all. And I watched that movie probably at least once a year, because for me, I learned a ton about him from that movie. If you've seen, and maybe we just need to have a Heath Ledger month. But there was similar moments in Four Feathers that there were in A Knight's Tale for me, where you see him go from this very determined person to this very humble person, from scene to scene, and just struggling on camera. It's just so believable to me. The movie itself is fine. But for me, it's his relationships with people in that movie that makes it work for me. Plus, I just thought it was beautifully shot. But yeah, he made some big choices that didn't always work out critically, but I thought for him to gain to where he would get to being Joker, which was probably his biggest gamble, but is also his biggest payoff.
Well, I might even say the bigger gamble is the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus coming off of Joker, off of Dark Knight, because he's working with Terry Gilliam, who's got a cult following. It's an odd story. And the thing that makes me so frustrated is there's been this urban legend that's been created that the Joker caused Heath Ledger's death. And that's absolutely not true. And this whole thought about how he became so despondent and so depressed and so angry. It's like the guy was like doing skateboard tricks on set as the Joker to entertain the crew and himself,
Yeah.
I mean,
He got sick. Like
He got
there's
sick, and it's a tragic.
it's more romantic, Tracy. It's more romantic
Yeah.
for us to think that it was a role that made him
Yeah.
that way.
But I love what you said, Val. I mean, this guy swung for the fences every single time. He was not going to take a role that was going to be conventional. He was not going to take on something that everybody thought he should do. It was like, okay, if everybody wants me to do this, I'm going to go over here. And like I said, even up to his death, working on the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, and thank heavens for all these actors that came in and took over that role in order to finish that film. It's not my favorite Gilliam film, but it's pretty remarkable as to how they pulled that one together.
One of my favorite scenes from A Knight's Tale is when he needs a suit for the dance. And I love his friend. I love that actor. He's so fantastic. And he's just looking around and he's like, what color will he be wearing tonight? And he's looking around and he's like, green with some brown toggles. That's a little specific, but okay. And somebody just doesn't know where to sleep tonight. Where'd my tent go? I thought I had a room, but it's gone. That guy's wearing it.
Well, I love that it's not a crisis, it's a immediate problem solving sort of thing. From the opening scenes of, okay, the knight's dead. We're not going to eat if he doesn't win. He's laying there. His spirit has left his body. And so every scene is, okay, we've got a problem. Look around, figure out some way. We're going to solve it, with lateral thinking, and then just keep moving forward. I think, they lucked out getting that ensemble cast.
Yeah.
Every single one of them is so good. And what I was thinking a few moments ago, I was doing what we all do last night and adding stuff to my watch list that I'm never going to get through that entire watch list. But the act of choosing while I'm going through available movies on Plex or whatever, I was watching trailers and I suddenly realized there was kind of a theme to the ones I was adding to the watch list. And I was skipping these movies that technically looked amazing. And, tour de force, if words tour de force appeared in it, I'd watch the trailer and I'm skipping all the ones that are emotionally draining. I'm skipping ones that are, here's a great trauma. And I'm adding the ones that are people helping each other and figuring out how to resolve conflicts and ending in a good place. And you think about The Knight's Tale, it ends in a remarkable place. It really does. And they go through all of these trials together. And that scene we were talking about with Chaucer being caught gambling. It's the guy that, they had their bonds, but he didn't owe him anything. William did not owe anything, but he took care of him. He's one of my men. I'm going to take care of him, and you'll get your money. And it was him giving his word to protect this person. And then you jump forward to the scene where Sir William is in the stocks. His men are surrounding him. They did not abandon him. They stood around him trying to protect him. They all stood together and they won. That's why I watch that every several weeks. That's why I think we all love it. That's the theme that carries through that entire film. We've got each other's backs.
Yeah. And I love that here he is in those situations where he's helping Chaucer and standing up for him when he owes him nothing, and in other situations throughout the movie where he's acting the knight 100%, like because that's just who he is. That's who his dad taught him to be. And it kind of helps. I think it's easy to look outward and say, well, this person's really good because they look the part, they act the part, they have the money, they have the status in life, but really that's not what makes you noble and great. And he defines all of that throughout the movie as in his character. even though he's a nobody technically, right? But he knows. I don't know. It's powerful. And we talked about that, the changing our stars and all of that. I think that's my favorite thing in the movie is just he is who he is, regardless of what his circumstance is, and he's who the Count should be in the circumstance that he's in, but he's not.
But the fact that, you know, so much of what they did to survive had to be pretense to allow him to do the knightly things that were his natural gifts and his natural inclinations. But then that came full circle to that whole ending scene. The announcements were made. Sir William Thatcher, your father heard that.
Yeah, that's such a good, that and the scene where he reconnects with his dad. Those are ones that hit hard for me. Yeah. But yeah, your dad heard that. That's a good line. Yeah. But so I think it's interesting because the director has a very interesting background. He started off as a screenwriter, and he said he felt like he would never direct a film because the directors were the nobles and the screenwriters were the peasants. And the peasant doesn't get to become a knight. He doesn't get to be a noble. And so he wrote like Nightmare on Elm Street 4. He wrote 976 Evil, which I've never seen, but I distinctly remember seeing the case on the VHS section of the work at the video store back in the day. But he went on to write LA Confidential. And then that allowed him into this position. And so it's really interesting that he kind of takes the same approach as this character, this nobleman who wants to achieve something and dream big, but society's telling him he can't do it, but he does it anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I was just thinking about, well, how this film is just permeated, you know, life choices. And a few weeks ago, my fiance Helen and I went to the last weekend of the Arizona Renaissance Festival. And at one point she was sitting on one of the benches watching one of the shows and had turned her head. And it was just like a perfect visual image. So I'm sitting there with the cell phone snapping photos. And I posted one and I was trying to think of how to caption it. And what I ended up putting there was, she is not the target. She is the arrow. Or William Thatcher.
And she is too.
You know, in terms of romantic, some of those lines and just his whole, the way it was written, but then the way that Ledger carried out those lines. Oh yes, I will see you then, my foxy lady. On a horse in a cathedral.
Yeah. Well, and this movie, and it's sad to say this because 2001, right? We established that was a little ahead of its time, but way after its time. But the fact that they had a female in this movie, you know, playing the part of what would usually be a male during that time. And, you know, in 2001, that shouldn't be like ahead of its time, but we're here and hopefully we'll catch up. But I thought that was really gutsy too, because that wasn't something that was at the forefront yet of like, you know, making it so that a female could be in a male part per se. And especially during that time, they touched on something social there. They didn't shove it down your throat.
Right.
That anybody could be anything, because, you know, of course they have William Thatcher who wants to be a knight. He's going to be a knight. I can be a knight if I want to be a knight. But to have, you know, a female that's over there trying to run a business just like all the other males, and they're like, oh, you want something, you know, for cheap, or go talk to her, you know, she'll do it. And then she's like, I'm not going to do it. Like, screw you, you know, like, what they tell you I was going to do, I'm not going to do that for you. You know, and then she throws the Nike symbol in there, which and makes that, you know, the goddess of. I just thought that was great. I'm like, all right, I see you. I see what you're doing, what you're trying to say to everybody. Again, though, it was slight. It wasn't something that was political. It wasn't something that was, you know, trying to make this big, huge noise. It was just, this is natural. This is a thing. You should just accept it. and I thought it was great. And the fact that, she was creating something that was lighter, that was easy to move in. And, it took a woman to think about that because, women, we've been wearing things that men have been creating for years that are cumbersome, and heels and freaking bras and corsets and everything that makes us hurt. We can't move in those things. So I just thought it was so fun that they kind of did that juxtaposition of this character.
Well, and I read an interview with the director, and he actually got some pushback on that character. And he said,
sure he did.
But he said back then, if you had a blacksmith and he died, his wife legally could take over the business in order to support the family, but she could not do anything fancy. She had to do horseshoes. She had to do very plain pieces. And so he said, no, there's some real thought behind that as to why I brought that in with that character. So
it's just sad that there was pushback. Like, why?
Right? In a movie,
like, it's okay for us to have queen, but we can't have a female blacksmith. Like, come on, Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, when you've got everybody out there stomping their feet and clapping to Queen, I think the point for historical accuracy has kind of gone out the window. But it is interesting to know that is rooted in something historical, because I do think that we tend to think in our society that everything that is the norm has always been the norm.
Yeah.
Even though, and then you find out that's not always the case, that there were these exceptions, there were these things that happened historically speaking, and that maybe we're not as progressed as we think we are.
Maybe.
Yeah. It would have, as a screenwriter, I would have had to fight the urge to throw in a line there about the other blacksmith saying, well, you can go to her because she's only allowed to be paid 70% of what we get.
Yeah.
You're going to get a discount.
You should get a 30% discount there by going to her.
Yeah, it was like at the forefront of before, all the noise came. This movie was kind of, at the right before that. So as I give it some claps.
Yeah,
give it some snaps for fighting for that.
I love
Is that a thing that we do now? Do we do the snaps? Is that our thing?
That's
now?
what they do at Slam Poetry.
Yeah.
Well, I do that.
You like it because they're making a point. They're making a point, so I'm giving them the snaps.
We did talk about I married an axe murderer.
Harriet.
Yeah.
So,
Harriet.
We did do some snapping then, sure.
But I love that scene because when Ledger goes up to her and she's like, I'm not doing it. He's like, oh, okay, I'll go back and tell those guys they were right. And she's like, right about what? And it's like he's totally baiting her into this, and he knows exactly what he's doing. But this is just played out so well.
Yeah.
Oh,
go ahead. No, go ahead, James.
I was just thinking in terms of how well this ensemble came together. I would have loved to have been there at the table read when the director revealed that they were going to wrap up the whole thing with basically a fart joke, which was going to require the participation of all of the principals.
I think with this group, they were probably like, awesome,
right.
Let's do it. We are all in.
With this group, that might have been an impromptu thing, and the director's like, okay, roll tape. Let's get Alan, did you start this? Say yes, Alan.
He is so great in this movie. He's great in just about everything he does. But Alan Tudyk, he is just phenomenal actor.
Okay, well, even that, even given the whole ensemble, the fact that he had the conflicts he did with Chaucer, I actually like that they did not get along, were not going to get along, but they were united in their support of Sir William.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved, he was just this quiet, side character but every time he was on screen, you couldn't stop watching.
Yeah.
He again, I love it. I love the side characters on how in-depth their individual stories are. Because I care about all of them. And I feel like I've seen so many movies in the past 2 years where I don't care about the side characters. Sometimes I don't care about the main characters enough because you don't give me enough to care about. And they had so many characters, and we touched on enough of each of their backgrounds enough to know who they are, that we can then see and project, what in our minds, what we think they would do, enough to care if they would die. And, I really think that yes, this ensemble was great, but the writing was so neat. Like, it's just, there's no mess. I mean, how many characters do we have here? There's at least 6 characters that we have to care about at any given time. I mean, DC can't do that with the freaking superhero movie with superhero characters that we've known for 20 years. We don't care about them. And you give us these characters that we've never met in our lives, and we want to see more. The movie's over, but I want to know more. And, I would cry if they all died. So, it was, just, I kind of want to know where, Rufus, like what happens to Rufus. I want to know what the princess, like where her life was before this all happened. You know what I mean? Like, she's an interesting character that I do. One thing that I would say about this film, I wanted a little more of her story. I understand why we don't have it. But it would be cool to know more about why she is there, who she is really, because we just kind of accept that we know who she is and why she's there. But I mean,
she had status, but also restrictions.
Yeah. So I don't really, she's a mystery. And that's why Heath's character is just enthralled by her, because she's this mystery. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to know her story. I mean, there's so many different side stories that I'd like to know about.
Well, and they established so many of the characters through their dialogue so well. I'm thinking about the first time that Chaucer, feeling obligated, gets up to announce the night, does that whole spiel, and we walk in the shadow of his turbulence. And has no idea what to do. And Mark Penny goes, yeah. Like, he had to be the clap starter,
Yeah.
They had no applause sign, so he had to do something. Let them know this is where you clap now.
And I really love the scene too, where at the very end, Heath Ledger's William, he can't hold the lance, and so he's like, lash it to my arm. And the guy comes over to start the match, and Paul Bettany as Chaucer realizes, I can't let this happen. He's not ready. And so he runs and jumps onto the table and gives the opening announcement. He's got to announce this night, buying him time to get the lashing done, which I thought is great.
Yeah. He has so many great, like, monologue type parts in this movie. They're all just fantastic. Every time he announces him, even when they meet him and he's naked on the road. Yeah.
That guy, even though he was a very, very minor role, when they have that scene where he has learned from watching Jeff make these announcements.
Yeah.
Yes.
Had this little, good for you, guy.
Yeah. It was a good effort.
I just wanted like, let's get ready to rumble. That's really expensive.
Yeah.
That's really expensive to have.
Almost
that
as expensive as Happy Birthday.
Happy Birthday's free now.
Is it free now?
Yep, as of last year, you can Happy Birthday it all day long. You're good to go. But let's get ready to rumble. That guy will take you to the bank.
He'll take residuals for generations to come.
When he's more expensive than Queen, we know he's done something right.
That's a good point.
I wonder how that was taken by like Brian May when they got the request about here's what we'd like to license your music for. Although Brian May is like way high on the tower of overall coolness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure he was like, yeah.
You probably read the script and was like, this is perfect. I love it.
You want to put this into a night movie? All right. I'm down.
Yeah. Like, it seems like it's right up their alley. So
yeah.
Well, knowing how they actually wrote that song, and then I'm just kind of picturing Brian May's face watching the opening scenes of this movie where they have all these medieval peasants at a jousting tournament stomping and clapping exactly the way that he pitched it to Freddie Mercury and the other guys.
Yeah.
That's got to bring a
Well,
smile to
and
your face.
I remember there were record sales of the album being downloaded by people who had probably never, heard Queen before in their lives during that time. I think it was like they were on the top 20 list again during that time.
That and Wayne's World.
Yeah.
That was my introduction to Queen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Mike Myers.
Yep. And headbanging in the car. I still, when that comes on in the car, I still like to try to headbang.
Somebody needs to put together like a music compilation video of these two movies for Queen. Yeah. That would be rad.
That would be cool.
Do it, Jake. You have time on your hands, right?
All the time to do that.
Kids to work. Make them earn their living.
I either headbang to Bohemian Rhapsody, or I like to do Garth's lip syncing that he does at the end, where he just, even though I know the words, it doesn't matter. I love to lip sync it that way because it reminds me.
So before we jump into grades, when I was researching about this movie, there's just one thing that stuck out to me that we didn't come anywhere close to talking about this in the conversation. So I want to shoehorn this in. Is that the director met with Heath Ledger at LAX. He was flying like from Australia to Europe or something with a stopover in LAX, or I can't remember the details. But anyway, he's got like a 3-hour window. And so the director goes to meet with him, and Heath Ledger shows up with what looks to be like a poster tube, one of those big tubes that you carry posters in. And they sat down and started talking about the movie. And he's like, we didn't even really talk about the movie. We just ended up like getting to know each other and talking about personal stuff. And so at the very end, he said, so what are you traveling with? What's in the poster thing? And he said, oh, that's my didgeridoo. And the director was like, do you know how to play that? And he's like, yeah. And he pulled this out. And they're at this restaurant.
I just have this didgeridoo with me.
I just have this with me. And he plays it. And like people are stopping and watching, because they're like, what in the world is going on? And then he just put it away and went and got his flight and went on. But I'm like, just for some reason, the idea of Heath Ledger traveling with a didgeridoo just cracks me up.
It makes sense. Right next to his skateboard. Didgeridoo, skateboard, whatever his favorite. What do you think his favorite treat is? Like, what do you think he had with him?
Well, if we're going to go with didgeridoo, I mean, it's probably a Vegemite sandwich.
Is that a treat, though?
Damn, he does.
From what I understand, no.
It probably ranks right up there with Coca-Cola Starlight, which I tried this week.
Oh, how was that?
Is
that the Coca-Cola with coffee in it?
No, it's the Coca-Cola that's supposed to taste like space, and it tastes like a fruity burnt caramel, and the aftertaste is horrific.
How is that even a thing? We're gonna pitch you a drink that tastes like space.
Yeah.
Their next one is Coca-Cola Pixels, I think, and it's supposed to taste like pixels.
Wow. Somebody
Why am I not rich? Like, I have a bunch of nonsense ideas that I could just sell to people.
Yeah, but this is like beyond being rich. This is like, we are the god of soft drinks, so we can do pretty much whatever we want, and we know it'll be fine.
New Coke.
Well, okay.
As long as you don't change.
See, they tried that too early. They weren't quite there yet.
But see, they're leaving Coke alone. They're trying Coke Starlight or Coke Pixel.
Yeah, I saw at the airport Coke with coffee in it, and I was just like, but so do you want to die? I just feel like you've already got caffeine, and now you're going to add coffee, and they're in like the cans that look like what are the energy drinks?
Like the Red Bull can.
Red Bull. That's like a Red Bull looking can right next to the Red Bull. It's just the heart stop section of the drink aisle. And if you drink it, great. Maybe you have a high tolerance. If you gave that to me, I literally would be super up, and then I'd die. I'd just be done. Yep. You'd be like, Val was good for like a half hour. She got so much done, and then she died.
And then she died.
I just blew up.
Nathaniel sent me a meme a few weeks ago. It said, I accidentally put Red Bull in my coffee maker, and now I can hear colors.
I believe that. I believe that.
Yep. All right. Well, let's give this a letter grade like we do. We will start with you, Val, and then we'll end with you, James. So you'll be last for us as our guest.
Yeah, I mean,
Save
I
the
already
best for
threw out my
last.
grade at the beginning of
I know.
the show. I'm sorry. I just got ahead of myself
We don't want
because I
people to
was
stick
so
around to the end
excited.
to hear our grades. Let's just
I
throw them out at the
mean,
beginning.
I'm one part of this. Like, they want to know yours. I'm sure. But I give it an A. Like, this is a movie, like James says, I can watch this if I'm scrolling through and I just don't know what I want to watch and it's there, like it pops up, I'm probably gonna watch it. If somebody's like, hey, you know, Knight's Tale, are you in? No questions asked. Like, I'm gonna watch this movie a couple times a year. And if somebody hasn't seen it, I'm gonna be like, what are the choices that you're making in your life that this hasn't been one of them? Stop what you're doing right now and watch this movie because it will change your life. And that's, you know, I say it in jest, but it really does. Like, if you really sit down and watch this film, not do other things while you're watching it, because we tend to do that now while we're at home, right? We turn something on, like, give it your full attention, let it wash over you, really give into it, and you're going to have a really good experience that does change your life.
I'm also going to give it an A. It is like, if it's on, even if I'm not in the mood to watch it, I'm in the mood to watch it. So I guess, like, I'm always in the mood to watch this movie. But yeah, like, it's one that I enjoy, and it's one that I've seen enough times that really I could come in the middle and I know right where I'm at, and I'm fine with it. And then I would probably stop and after I watch it and watch it again from the beginning because I missed all the good parts in the beginning. But like, it's just one of those movies that I could watch over and over again. So it's an A for me. Tracy?
I'm sensing a trend here.
Yeah.
And so the
And you
thing
like
I
to
thought
buck
was-
those so often.
Yeah, you do. We think we're gonna have an all A show, and then Tracy comes in. He's like, "Well,
Well, actually,
I'm not going to do the well actually today, but I think it's interesting that when I was reading this article with the interview with this director, and he said he actually gets more comments about A Knight's Tale than he does LA Confidential, and that says a lot to me. But this is one that I am grateful for James for introducing me to. I had kind of discounted it when it came out because of the rock music. I was like, that seems weird. And I just never got around to it. And then James was like, no, you need to sit down and watch this film. And looking back, I mean, watching this again last night, and I'm like, Paul Bettany, Alan Tudyk, Heath Ledger, I mean, the list goes on. Solid script, holds up really well. I'm going to go an A.
I can't believe
I was
you wouldn't
nervous
watch a
for a
movie
second.
because you thought it was weird. You're weird, Tracy."
I know, but that one for some reason it didn't resonate with me.
It didn't have it felt weird. It didn't have the appeal that Sharknado does. You know,
Right,
it just
like,
felt weird and
I-
out of place with that rock music. Sharks in a
And
tornado,
I'm
no
a rock
problem.
music guy. I'm a rock
Yeah,
music
I don't
guy,
get
but
it. Yeah,
for some reason, this was young me. I was young and stupid.
that's not a serious enough movie for me.
I'm gonna watch
Where's-
Sharknado.
I'm going to watch Das Boot. You know, I mean,
All right,
Sorry.
James, what about you?
Wow, you know, just coming into this whole thing, the idea of, yeah, I'm going to get together with some friends and we're just going to, you know, riff on this awesome movie, did not prepare me for the fact that sitting here talking about this over the last hour, I got teary just talking about some of these scenes, and not the big scenes, some of the small scenes got me tearing up a little bit. That's a rare thing. That's a rare thing to, you know, have something that I've seen 200 times still have that effect just talking about it on a podcast. So I'm going to give it the same grade as Ralphie's teacher gave the theme in his dream in A Christmas Story. A plus, 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 plus.
you know, I love you are the second guest on this show to mention Ralphie and the grading when we had our friends from the Watchtower over, and Mike gave it an A+++ for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. So,
Well, and I went there last week with Big Fish.
Yeah.
This is the second
That's
week
right.
in a row that we've had Ralphie's teacher mentioned on the show. So just getting some good airtime on movies that
go.
make us.
We are all in the zone.
Yeah, I love it.
5 cents spent well.
is
Yeah.
this our first quad A, Jake? We've had
I
triple
think it
A.
is. I think it is.
Yeah, I think it is our first quad A.
Yep. This is beyond AAA rated.
Wow.
This is 4 A's. So
A Knight's Tale.
A Knight's Tale. Fit for any draft and that you might want to send it to war, whatever. It's ready to go. 4A.
But somebody's got to say the end quote of the movie on our way out here.
Well, usually Tracy's the one that takes care of that kind of stuff.
Before we
for us.
go, I'm going to give the honor to James. But before we go, James, tell people where they can find your books. And I mean, you're a motivational speaker. You're an illustrator. Guys, his art is incredible. His writing is just as good. And he's an even better guy. But tell us about where people can find you.
I'm most often on Facebook under my personal account, James Artemis Owen. There's a fan page and a group page, but James Artemis Owen is where I'm most active. And then the main website that's connected to everything else is jamesaowen.com.
And if you follow him on Facebook, when he gets a head cold and gets on some Sudafed, it is like eating popcorn and enjoy the ride because he posts while on Sudafed and it is delirious. It's great.
Yeah, if I mention the word decongestants, people cancel their plans and make popcorn.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
I spend the whole day apologizing for all
We
sorts
should
of
do a whole show on decongestants. Everybody, I'll last about 30 minutes and then I'm out.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we've got a couple of shows we've got to do now, Val. One where you're on the Coke coffee and then one where you're on decongestants.
I think we
Both
have to do
of
the
them end up with
decongestants
me
first.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have to do the decongestants first because the Coke is going to kill her.
right. Well, yeah, we got to do it in the right order then. We don't want to. And we probably shouldn't do them on the same day.
We'll do it on like an anniversary show so I can at least go out on an anniversary.
You know, not
All right.
everybody gets to choose their ending. So when you get that chance,
Oh, I see what you did there. See what you did.
Well, thank
You
you
know-
everyone for listening. Thank you, James, for being here. We really appreciate having you on the show. And if you want to send us any feedback, you can send that to podcast@moviesthatmakeus.com. You can also comment on any of our posts on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or on our YouTube channel. We'd love to hear from you and hear your thoughts. Go ahead,
And
Tracy.
TikTok. Jake is our
Well-
new TikTok guy.
Awesome.
I don't know that I want to promote our TikTok yet. It's rough, but
How are
We're
we
getting
supposed
there.
to throw it? I got to get on there.
so. All right. Thank you, everybody. And until next time, we won't see you at the movies. This is the quote part. Who wants
Go
to end
for
with the
James.
quote?
I'm going to quote it, and I'm going to modify it slightly since I'm speaking to the three of you. You have been weighed. You have been measured. You have absolutely been found worthy. Welcome to the new world.
This has been a Stolen Droids Media production.